Welcome to the News Hour. Congress today formally certified President-elect Donald Trump's election victory.
As congressional correspondent Lisa Desjardins explains, it was a routine procedural moment, in striking contrast to the violent insurrection of 4 years ago.
An unusual scene, a winter storm all but shutting down the nation's capital.
The House come to order.
But Congress at work with a historic charge, counting electoral votes and
The votes for President of the United States are as follows.
certifying that former President Donald Trump will soon be president again.
Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida received 30.
There were no objections, just repeated cheers as winning states for each party were announced. Presiding over this in her role as vice president, Kamala Harris, the woman who hoped this day would be hers. Instead, she did her duty and gavelled Trump's victory into history.
Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received 312 votes. Kamala D. Harris of the state of California has received 226 votes.
On social media, former Vice President Mike Pence, who rejected pressure from Trump in 2021, wrote it was particularly admirable that she presided over an election she lost. Harris told reporters Americans must be willing to fight for and respect democracy.
Otherwise, it is very fragile and it will not be able to withstand moments of crisis. And today, America's democracy stood.
For her replacement, a standout moment. Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio was present for the certification of his win as Trump's VP. Outside, beefed-up security surrounded the Capitol, but the tall barriers stood untested. Snow, rather than protests, blanketed the National Mall.
We're not going to take it anymore. This is our country.
A stark contrast to 4 years ago, when a mob of Trump supporters, fed lies of a stolen election, easily overwhelmed bike rack barriers, assaulted police, and stormed the Capitol.
Everyone just get down.
The violence delayed things. Congress returned that evening, with 145 Republicans still voting against certifying, but they failed. The riot is now the largest prosecution in Department of Justice history. So far, 1,500 people have been charged or convicted for their actions that January 6th, 590 charged with assaulting or impeding police. Some 700 people have been sentenced to time behind bars so far. But all of them are now on the cusp of a promised pardon from Trump, as he again stressed last month on NBC.
Yeah, I'm looking for
issue these pardons.
These people have been there, how long is it, 3 or 4 years?
Okay.
Today on the Senate floor, Democratic leader Chuck Schumer called for Trump to reconsider.
Pardoning the criminals who assaulted police officers and tried to halt the democratic process would be a dangerous endorsement of political violence.
President for 2 more weeks, Joe Biden wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post calling on Americans to remember January 6th as a day when our democracy was put to the test and prevailed, to remember that democracy, even in America, is never guaranteed. Today, certification again felt like a formality, but it had more unseen guardrails. Reforms passed after the insurrection raised the bar for objecting and clarified the vice president's role as purely ministerial.
I think we'll remember the people who were lost, the people who were injured, the people who were wounded, and all of their families. But I think we can feel good about the fact that we still, at this point, have a functioning constitutional democracy.
Democratic function will be on display in 2 weeks when Trump returns to take the oath of office, his second. Trump took to social media today to call this a big moment in history. Republicans will control the House, Senate, and White House, but razor-thin margins mean even the smallest divisions could derail the incoming president's agenda. Trump wants one massive partisan deal, loading almost every Republican priority into one multi-trillion-dollar tax and spending package to come. That plan is at odds with those announced by other leaders in the Capitol, who have envisioned smaller, separate bills. Snow didn't shut down Congress today, but for all the tranquility and normalcy, expectations are for a hard-to-predict and potentially wild ride ahead.
And to catch us up on the latest news on the Hill today, I'm joined now by our Lisa Desjardins. Lisa, it was so striking to see those images from 4 years ago when a very normal procedure and part of our democracy was upended by violence. I remember you being inside the Capitol 4 years ago, and you were inside today as it all unfolded without incident. So what were you hearing from lawmakers about the mood?
That's right. Anna, you were right outside for that too. It was an emotional day, and I think surprisingly so. There have been anniversaries of January 6th, the date itself, since 2021, but there has not been an anniversary of the Electoral College certification. And I think being in that room today, talking especially to Democrats, was highly emotional. I talked to more than one, a handful even, who were brought to tears. Surprisingly, they didn't mean to come to tears when they were there on the floor, but felt themselves really drawn back into that moment, felt themselves fearing that perhaps something like that isn't all the way out of the realm of possibility now, because there is a real concern, especially from Democrats, but some Republicans I talked to also, about the whitewashing of January 6th, the idea that it wasn't that big of a deal, the idea that people want to move on. Also in that group, Capitol Police officers. For those who were there that day, it is a spectrum of emotions. Some of them still feel betrayed. In that group is Harry Dunn, the police officer who went on to run for Congress. He told me tonight that while people are calling to move on, how can they move on when there haven't been consequences and when Trump still hasn't closed the door to this kind of activity? Other Capitol Police officers, frankly, Amna, are more jaded, and some of them that have been there just counting the days till retirement.
Lisa, meanwhile, today also Republicans are marking the governing trifecta. They have won control of the White House, the Senate, and the House. So what does today mean for them?
Right. For Republicans, this was a celebration. They won the presidency. They were there together, and they also have that trifecta. But there's another layer to it, too, Amna. A couple of Republicans admitted to me that for the past 4 years, they've been sort of carrying the water of this idea of a stolen election, that they couldn't even speak out, many of them publicly, against former President Trump and the lies he told about this. Now they've won an election, in the words of one, fair and square. So for them, less shame after these 4 years, but all of these issues, of course, still remain hovering above the Capitol.
Lisa Desjardins with the latest on a big day on Capitol Hill. Lisa, thank you.
You're welcome.